Hey there, manifestors. Let's talk about love and intimate relationships in this video. In this video, I'll be sharing ideas based on my perception of the world, such as that each of us embodies a combination of masculine and feminine energies. So we're, regardless of our gender and of our sexual preferences, we all have a mix of masculine and feminine energies. And according to Human Design, of all of the types, the manifestor is the most yang, meaning the most masculine type, in that they're goal-oriented, they're focused on action and initiating, and more of that kind of fiery going after things type masculine energy. And I've always found it interesting to notice that despite having a masculine type, that oftentimes when I meet manifestor women, they are very feminine in their personality. So they might, even though their type is masculine, have a lot of softness and just this kind of nurturing, loving quality. And of course, that's not true of all manifestors, but I think that that's something that especially manifestor women have to contend with in reconciling the masculine yang type of their aura with potentially a feminine personality. And that has always made me curious about how that goes with love and dating, because in typical, for example, cisgendered relationships where a woman is attracted to a man, usually the woman represents more of the feminine and the man represents more of the masculine. Of course, that's not always the case. We can't overgeneralize here, but I'm just kind of stating this as something I see. And so how does a manifestor woman relate to a man who is more masculine, for example? Do those even go together, or what happens with that? So this is the kind of my curiosity as I began to explore that in the interviews with the manifestor women as a part of this series. And of course, part of that is just conditioning, in that most women are conditioned that they're supposed to be quite feminine. And so that can also be something that a manifestor woman needs to, grow an acceptance of, is the inherent masculinity and the yang force of the manifestor aura. The experiences of the manifestor women that I interviewed are quite varied in regards to relationships, and I'll just share what came from them in their own words as they shared it without editing. There are no big conclusions to be drawn from today's video. It's more of a discussion and an exploration.
So for my whole life, I've had people from like bosses of mine, boyfriends, friends, would comment on that aspect of my personality, that they've never met anybody so fiery, but also so soft. Because I am a very feminine woman, but I do approach my life with a certain tenacity that I think is specific to a manifestor, because I just am so singularly focused on, my goals, my life, what I need to achieve. And I think as a woman, it's difficult because a lot of men, in my experience, have felt neglected because they didn't feel needed by me, because I'm so used to just doing my own thing. And then they're like, well, what is my function here? And my response is always, your function is to be my partner. I want somebody to complement my life. I don't need somebody to help me in my life. And I think I think because a lot of the men that I know really take pleasure in being providers, being with a manifestor woman is kind of like a head scratcher. It's like, well, what do you want? You know, what do you need from me? And so that's been my experience.
One of my biggest initiating moves as a manifestor in my life to date has been proposing to my boyfriend. And this is something that I really took a lot of time to feel into and to feel the rightness of it, because I didn't want it to be something that was trivial. I didn't want it to be something that came from my mind. It was more in response to the love between us, and I could feel that the relationship was moving to that next level. And for me to take that step and to initiate that next chapter with a proposal was incredibly well received from my boyfriend. And it also really set the stage for the dynamic between us as each of us were honoring our types in that way. Making this declaration to him and this commitment and asking this question allowed him as a manifesting generator to truly respond from the depth of him. And in relationships in general, I've really found that even being a woman, initiating doesn't mean taking over or taking charge. It actually just means to just spark that initial energy, because that's where the life force wants to go, and that's our role, is to create that spark, and then everything will unfold as a domino effect from that. And it was also quite similar when we first met. Whilst he did all of the courting, it was initiated by me making first contact, which showed him that my interest was there. It was informing him that my interest was there and that I was interested in him courting me. And by doing that, he was able to respond with clarity that he wasn't going to be rejected, that I was interested too. And then he just ran with it from that point on. So I really find in my personal relationships, professional as well as with friends, that sometimes it just takes that subtle step. And sometimes it's a big step, but it doesn't mean taking over or taking charge. It's actually starting the energy off in the first place. And then life takes over and the creative force does what she needs to do.
How have you learned to face the rejection of always having to be the one that starts things and goes after what you want in life?
It hasn't stopped me. I can't say it has stopped me, but it certainly have put me in a position where men don't accept me the way I would like to be accepted. My problem has always been with men. So, but fortunately I could do it because I was financially able to sustain myself in all the instances. It hasn't really stopped me as such. That's why I have the type of life I have. But it certainly, as I said to you, hasn't given me the family units that I actually want in my life. Because I think you need a partner that is at least very different from the type of partners I have had. That's why I have always said to quite a few women that I know, or not women I know, women that I don't know, I said some people can really put out so much shit and the man still is beside her, like I'm telling you about this particular person. But every time I show my own strength and without wanting to compromise, men don't really, for some reason, support my strength. I would say that way. They do not. I somehow am a threat to them for some unconscious reasons. I don't know. But I think men on the whole feel that I'm a threat to them. Mm-hmm. So I think manifestor women must be very, very careful if they want to have a good relationship. In relationships, I think especially with women manifesto relationships, or rather with manifesto women, I think it would be very useful to know all about these kind of things before you go into a relationship. Which aspect of yourself are you willing to compromise? I haven't really compromised, I must say, in the way I express myself. I don't think I have. Maybe it's a manifestor quality, I don't really know, but it hasn't been necessary for me to take a lot of shit from men. But I have also paid a price. I haven't got that family that I have always wished for. I don't know what is it called in English, but in Danish we call it kernefamilie. It's a family unit that's very tight.
The area of being in a relationship and having a romantic relationship is not an issue for me, really. I remember having relationships in the past. I mean, I've been married 20 years. He's a manifesting generator. He's also very independent himself. So it's worked really, really well for us. Really well for us. And he's really learned in a beautiful way to nurture who I am and to uphold it in a powerful way. So there is independence. You know, we have this way of really honoring our sovereignty. Like we used to say, we still say, but like we're like walking to God side by side, walking to God together side by side. And of course we engage and have friends and have, you know, beautiful lovemaking and all of that. And yet we're sovereign beings. And, you know, most people, that's kind of an alien concept, I think. Unless, you know, you've worked on yourself a lot, I think. So to me, I think it's a powerful place. And I remember in the past, though, relationships, one in particular, a longer relationship I had, I remember he used to call me cocky independent. And which baffled me. Again, it was another one of those labels that was just like, what? Like, I remember getting my hair cut really short. I used to have long hair and cutting it really short once. And he was upset that I didn't inform him ahead of time. He didn't say the word inform, but in my mind, it was like, I don't have to ask you permission. It's my hair. Like, it was baffling to me. Like, I didn't understand what he was talking about when he called me cocky independent. Or I would just take off and go on a trip and say, hey, this Saturday I'm going to leave to go visit my friend in Florida. And he would get really upset about that. So it was a problem, you know, in the past. It was definitely a problem at times. And again, it's always that place, which I think is normal, like whoever we are, whatever type we are, whatever, it feels so natural and normal to us. So it never feels like it's wrong. But I didn't know very well that concept of informing. Two things. I didn't know the concept of informing because I wasn't aware of the impact that I would have, including appearing with shorter hair. Like, it didn't dawn on me that someone would be bothered by that. So anyway, with me though, as long as there's spaciousness and sovereignty within the marriage, within the partnership, it works beautifully.
According to Ra, in the Manifestor Manifesto, which again I recommend that you check out if you're a manifestor, it's so helpful. I'll put the link below. He says the ideal is manifestor with manifestor, so type for type relationships. You really don't see that. One of the rarest things to see are manifestors together because of the way they are raised and conditioned. Manifestors are caught in a world of generators and attracted to the generator frequency. After all, they don't have a defined sacral and they're an energy type. So they have a way of competing with the inherent power that is there in generators. This generating conditioning makes manifestors constantly feel like they're at the low end of the scale. So when you're looking at a relationship as a manifestor, you know, of course, in all relationships, the type of our partner is going to greatly influence how we interact with them.
So I have to be honest about being feminine and being a manifester, because it feels like a little bit of an oxymoron. And many, many years ago, when I chose to leave a very long-term marriage, I was married for 21 years. I knew I had to leave the marriage. And I was married to another manifester, by the way, which is very interesting, a very filled-in manifester, meaning that he had a lot of his centers filled in, except for maybe two. So, you know, I wore the pants in the marriage. And it came to a point where I did so much work on myself that I was done with that. I wanted to be the feminine piece and the feminine partner. And so I want to receive, I really want to be that person who receives. I mean, to be quite honest, I don't, people think that manifestors and another manifestor, I don't think we penetrate each other. I actually even had another manifestor come at me, a man, and and I kind of said, I'm not moving to where you are, so this is not going to work. He didn't like it. He was okay with it, but I wasn't. And so that's me honoring what's tuned into my soul. So to be that feminine piece, that sweetness of that feminine piece, to me, femininity is receiving. So I couldn't receive him, the latest manifestor man I had mentioned. My ex-husband, my husband is what I like to call him. I needed him to step up to be the manifestor man in the relationship, and it was already too late because I was so busy running the show. I think there was too much baggage there, and I've done so much work that he wasn't up on my level of, I understand, I can dance with her now with that. I think it's a very difficult situation for me right now because I don't know, and part of me, it feels like I'm working through that right now to understand how do I be the strength, the impact that I make on the world, but also in a relationship, be that feminine piece.
I've been in a relationship with a manifestor, and I've been in relationships with generators and relationships with projectors. And I think I understand, obviously I understand the manifestors the best, because I'm like, oh, you're just like me. But I think as a woman who I want to have like my feminine side really nurtured, I have preferred the attention of generators because I feel like it makes me feel very loved, and having a relationship with a manifestor, as lovely as they may be, it's a kind of a cold love. I don't know how to explain it, and I know from input from my ex-boyfriends that that's the kind of love that I give too, and so I can understand it. Receiving it is much different than the warmth that I feel from a generator, even from a projector as well. Is, I feel nurtured, whereas I feel like the manifestor love, it can be very intense, but it's not as nurturing. That's just my experience.
I found it optimistic and helpful that Ra shared that in his experience as a manifestor of 30 years in relationship with a generator, that he found that the anger in the relationship just dissolved as his partner got in the habit of sharing news broadcasts or informing. So, for example, saying like, news broadcast, we're out of milk. News broadcast, the car, the tire is flat. News broadcast, we need to, pay the rent or whatever was needed. News broadcast, I'm really hungry. I'd love to go out for dinner. So instead of asking or telling the manifestor what to do, giving them news broadcasts and having this practice of informing. And he said that just that simple thing, which is, difficult for a generator to get in the habit of, because generators are so used to wanting to be asked and asking. But if they can get in the habit of news broadcasts, if your partner can get in that habit, then what he says is that just that simple practice of informing alone dissolves the anger in the relationship. And the converse is true, that if there is asking and telling in the relationship, what ends up happening is this anger just builds up in the manifestor, and that eventually leads to the destruction of the relationship. He says manifestors can have a very hard time having relationships that don't fall apart because of the buildup of anger. Asking and being told is an imprisonment. If it doesn't bother you as a manifestor to be asked and told, you are deep into the soup of conditioning, because this is the way that we get our powers stripped. This is how we turn passive slaves, running around doing all the things we are asked or told to do, and telling and asking others. So it seems like having a good relationship for a manifestor really hinges on, how much the manifestor is empowered in their strategy and authority in their relationship. So in other words, definitely watch the video about informing, impact, and also really understand your decision-making authority so that you can guide your decisions correctly. I hope that you learned from today. And again, I just want to really thank the awesome women who are in this series and encourage you to go check them out. I've put all the links below to their social media and their websites. They're amazing people. So definitely check them out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the final video coming soon.